So without further ado, what we all came here for, we're going to introduce first our former supervisor, Ken Yeager, to give us some opening remarks. So let's give a hand clap for Supervisor Yeager.
Good morning, everybody. What a great day it's going to be, right? I'm so excited to be here. How many of you are county employees? County employees in the house. You know, I held a number of elected positions, but I have to say my favorite by far was being a county supervisor. The county just does such incredible work for all of the citizens here. And they hire just outstanding people and allows people who want to work with others to have a wonderful career. And I think we know one of the best programs around is the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, and we have a lot of people from the office here. It was really my honor to be the one who made the motion to create the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. And it's been about 8 years now since the office was approved. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to leave a legacy behind. I didn't want it to be that the issues that faced our community were not being addressed long term. And so I got the support of the board to approve it. And a year later after that, they hired Maribel Martinez to be the director. And now, of course, Sarah Fernando is the director. So anyway, it's really my great pleasure to be here, to support all of you, to thank you for all the work that you do, because again, our community needs as much support as we can get. And it's wonderful that this legacy continues on. So have a great summit, everybody.
And she's walking. Okay, everyone, let's give Supervisor Yeager another hand. He's always open and willing to come and support us, so we appreciate you. Up next, we will have our lovely Supervisor Arenas giving us a few words before we start this day off.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Oh, no. I know this room can do better than that. Good morning, everyone. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So it is so wonderful to be here today. I'm Sylvia Arenas. I'm the county supervisor, the newest of the county supervisors, and I've got to share that having former supervisor Ken Yeager before me is an absolute honor, because you've paved the way for so many progressive policies that have left an infinite opportunity for all of us to work on and to benefit from. So thank you so much for your work, and I'd love to just give you another big round of applause for all the work that you've done. One of the things that I love to do is we always have to take a look back at the things that and the people who have paved the road for us, right? And I think for all of us here, there's people that are important in your life that have either shaped you in some way, whether it was something negative or something positive, but they shaped you, right? And they shaped your character. And maybe your character actually was formed and your resiliency was developed because of some of those, whether they were negative or positive experiences in our lives. And we are who we are today because of our past. And so I always take a look at our past, and especially the people who have come before me, to thank them for their bravery and for their innovation, because I wouldn't be here without them. And so that's why I always start my comments this way, and I'm so grateful that former supervisor Ken Yeager is here to remind us of all that things weren't as great as they are today, right? They just weren't. But we know that already, because you've all been experiencing some of those difficulties in life, and we as allies have witnessed your hardships and stood with you. And as a policymaker, I have the privilege of also formulating policies that can help as an ally. I'm the first progressive supervisor from District 1 to represent District 1. And I'm got to tell you, all the policies that are ahead of me, I'm just so excited because my district hasn't seen a progressive policymaker before. And I'm absolutely excited about just the level of opportunities for us. And today's theme also talks about all work is work, right? That's part of your theme. And some of the topics that you will talk about today you'll maybe discuss some of the adversity in being in a workplace that isn't as accepting, even though in 2020, I believe it was, where the Supreme Court ruling was in favor, once again, of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination against LGBTQ workers solely based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. So previous to 2020, anybody who was in the LGBTQ plus could be discriminated legally within their workplace, making work really difficult for everybody, not only for those who are in the LGBTQ community, but those of us who are also allies. We have seen how transgenders face even more greater barriers in the workplace and advancement. We've seen at the executive level how some LGBTQ community just doesn't ever reach that top level, do they? And what happens when our voices are absent? We don't get to formulate the policies, we don't get to formulate the culture. And that's why it's so important today that you're here, because all work is work. And showing up today is part of that work, right? I'm sure you've all been showing up every day, all day, and in great outfits like Hugh, let me tell you. Yes, let's give his outfit a big round of applause. Or showing up, ready to do the work. You've all been doing that already. And so there's nothing new that I can tell you about the good work that you've been doing, except that as an ally, I'm going to look for opportunities to elevate your priorities, to maybe make it easier for the work to happen. And part of that is earlier this year, I think you all know this, and the city of San Jose is doing this, and we had a resolution to support gender-affirming care. As you've seen in East Coast and South part of our nation, they are not as open and as progressive as we are. And so it was an honor to sign on to that and to approve it. But the real work, but that's easy, right? These resolutions, and although standing with our LGBT community is important, it doesn't take much effort for me, I think. That's a rather easy thing to do. What's difficult is going to be thinking about those policies that are going to be able to enhance your work environment, that's going to be able to enhance all the work, as unconventional as it may be, to maybe shift the way that we think about what work is. And part of that is, and I know in one of your later panel sessions, you'll talk about sex work. And one of the things that I did over at the city of San Jose was just changing language. We don't say prostitute, we say sex worker. Is a huge shift. And for some folks, it is huge, right? How about let's use our human trafficking unit and their efforts not to do sex worker stings, or what they would call prostitute stings. How about if we use them for what they're meant for? And just elevating those things, putting some light to those issues, making sure that the efforts that are within our local government are seen in the right way, in a different way, I think is part of also the work. And part of the work that you can count on me for to do. It's important that we recognize, and last year you all talked about intersectionality, and you recognize that there's a lot that crosses over in terms of LGBTQ communities and how important it is for all of us to work together. And so my commitment to you is to keep my ears open, my pen ready, because we love policy that can help advance our communities, especially those that have not been equal in terms of footing. Even though some of the laws have protected or beginning to protect, it doesn't mean that our culture and the way that we see things have really shifted. And so we got to continue to work, because all work is work. We got to continue to work to change and create paradigm shifts in whatever field and capacity and position that you're in, whether it's a policymaker like myself or whether you're working in the PIOs, the Public Information Officer, right? We have to look for opportunities to advance all of what we're doing here collectively. And so I've got to tell you that there's a member of my team here who has done some work on my behalf, and I know that I didn't ask her for permission, so I'm going to look to see if she would shake her head yes or no. She's that way. She's not. I made you all look. So one of the things, I won't point her out, but one of the things that she's done is to make sure that she stands with our LGBT community. And there was something that happened in Morgan Hill and in South County, and you guys might have heard about it, but this was a drag show that Chacho's restaurant was having down in South County. And, you know, it was a great show. Had food. I don't know, what more do you want? You're getting entertained and you're getting fed. But some people have said, well, you know, that is not appropriate. We need to have certain covers and we need to protect our children who are passing by. And it was just absolutely a ridiculous conversation. And so I've got to thank my team for making sure that I'm included in just knowing about some of these things. And then having them share with me what some of the best strategies are in order to move forward the agenda and to stand tall and to protect our LGBTQ community. And so there's work that needs to get done in South County. I will come back and I will ask you for that support, because remember, all work is work. And when there's somebody in South County that needs that support and that needs that alliance, I'll come back and ask for a little bit of work from your part. In the meantime, please count on me to do my part. I look forward to hearing more about some of the areas where you're going to be talking about entrepreneurship. You're going to be talking about workforce development. I know the pandemic has hit everybody hard, especially the LGBTQ community and the transgender community. And so anything that you can think of that you think is appropriate for a policymaker to get a hold of and to work with you on, I'm happy to do so. And so I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. Please keep, you know, those thoughts percolating in terms of how can I be your best ally, because I want to make sure that all work is work and that it's my work. Thank you.
That wasn't quite loud enough for such an amazing introduction. All right, I'm feeling it now, I'm feeling it. Okay, so quick announcement for all the folks that's still trying to type away at emails and respond to things that you probably should just leave at the office. We'll give you grace and we'll give you the Wi-Fi password. So you're going to connect that IHC, that's the name of the Wi-Fi, and then the password is SJCCC. IHC Rewards. IHC Rewards, password SJCCC. We'll act like we don't see you responding to the emails. Okay, so now we are going to graciously move into our first panel of the day. And this will be a panel full of subject matter experts. These are folks that have LGBTQ plus lived experience, and they're going to talk to you about how any organization can benefit from this experience. So without further ado, we will bring to the stage our facilitator, Ricardo Romero, and our panelists, Amber Siddle-Manas from our Office of Division, Equity, and Belonging, Isabella Garcia from our Behavioral Health Department, Rodrigo Garcia-Reyes from our Public Health Department, and Daniel Lanzo from San Jose's Parks and Recreation. So without further ado, let's clap these folks onto the stage.
All right, buenos dias. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for making time and being here today, especially as it's Friday, and I know the weekend is just around the corner, and you decided to join us this morning. I want to provide you with a quick welcome to all of you, and again, just thank you for being here and to join our first panel of the day, our panel discussion on subject matter expertise in action. I am Ricardo Romero-Morales. I am one of the program managers in the Division of Equity and Social Justice. More specifically, I oversee the Language Access Unit, the very first language access unit in the County of Santa Clara. So I'm really, really excited to be here today with all of you. Gracias, gracias. Today we have a group of well-known community leaders and distinguished governmental employees who are here with us to be able to share their lived experience and share with us some insights of their journey while building and contributing to the change that we are seeing today in our community. So I do want to thank you all for being here, and also each panelist brings their own unique experience. So let's without any further ado, let's start continuing and start hearing from them specifically. So without any further ado, let's jump into the questions. Are we ready? All right. Perfect. All right. So this first question is going to go for anybody in the panel. So in your own words, what are some of the key benefits of having LGBTQ plus individuals as subject matter experts in public sectors and government work?
I guess I could start. I think for queer people, a lot of us hold compassion because oftentimes when we're growing up, that's what we're seeking. A few weeks ago was just National Coming Out Day. And for me, living in San Jose, I didn't come out until like my early 20s. And that was because I grew up in a family that was very much Christian and didn't really find acceptance in that. I knew it was wrong at a very young age, even though ever since I was conscious, I knew I was queer. But I think because us as queer people hold that compassion, we're able to kind of emanate that and attract that to people. So, for example, I was a recreation leader in summer camp. And so, having someone like me surrounded by youth and them being able to feel comfortable in that is really important. And then as I kind of kept following up, as people told me, I brought that experience with me, as a recreation leader, going into working like front desk and customer service, and now as the communications manager for the department. I really move forward with our communications and really being, inclusive and having that kind of sense of belonging.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Anybody else want to add to that question?
I can add, because we're fierce.
Yes, we are.
So Supervisor Arenas was talking about the intersectionality, and I think that we do need to recognize that a lot of us, and a lot, like a lot, have had to fight constantly to be recognized, to be present. And I think that gives you, it broadens your view of what others need, because you know it yourself, how it is to knock at the door, or to break walls, to be present and to be visible. And I think that is really important in a lot of the work that we do as uh, public employees, public service employees, because we are aware of the needs of people. Even if we don't know what those needs are, we are aware that we cannot treat everyone with the same model, because we have had those issues, we have faced those struggles, and that, I mean, we're just, our lived experience is in constant battle of something else, and that gives you a different outlook of life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rodrigo. Yes, many of us in this room perhaps may speak a second language, and many of the times we did not come into this country knowing English and looking for resources. I remember the first time I wanted to get an HIV test because my partner tested positive for HIV test. For HIV, I didn't know where to go or who to ask, especially since I did not speak the language. So yes, I definitely concur with what both of you shared this morning in terms of like our experiences shape us and guide us through the work that we want to do for our community. And many of the times we don't want any other individuals to experience the barriers that we have. And with that, Amber, I have a question for you. If you can please share your personal journey of how your lived experience has intersected with your subject matter expertise to make a meaningful impact in the work that you do at the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name's Amber. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the Senior Management Analyst for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging. The goal of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging is to strengthen county and departmental policies, programs, and practices to advance racial equity in government. When we talk about equity within the office, it is as both a process and an outcome. The process is what shows up in our day-to-day operations in terms of supporting departments to embed racial equity principles and impact assessment tools into decision-making and resource allocation. But what I want to focus on this morning is the process, or so that's the process understanding of equity, but the outcome understanding, which for me is really encompassed in that last word of the name of our office, belonging. Our office uses a number of tools and frameworks from the Othering and Belonging Institute out of UC Berkeley. And so I wanted to read the Othering and Belonging definition of belonging because I haven't memorized it yet. More than just being seen or feeling included, belonging entails having a voice and the opportunity to use it to make demands upon society and political institutions. Belonging is more than having access. It is about the power to co-create the structures that shape a community. And for me, then responding to the portion of the question around my personal journey, belonging really resonates with me because from a very young age, I had an awareness that the way other people saw me was not the way that I saw myself. But it wasn't until I experienced puberty that awareness really crystallized into an understanding of I don't belong in my own body. And I didn't have the words or the ability to process what that meant. And so from a very young age, I sort of decided, okay, Amber is from here up, and really just invested in my mind and my learning, invested in sort of my analytical understanding of systems analysis, the way that systems and structures in this country have worked together since the country's inception to create marginalized communities, originally intentionally, now implicitly. And in building that, still absolutely disconnected from my body, and that had a number of mental and physical health impacts. But what I really want to highlight is when I entered the workforce, I ended up at Solano County Public Health, which is in the Northern Bay Area. And our health department had an opportunity to participate in a regional learning year with an organization called the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And Santa Clara County Public Health was also participating in that cohort. And so over a number of years of learning cohorts, met a number of people from this county, and particularly Dr. Ana Garcia, who is at the time was at Public Health Department, but is today our first Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. And I distinctly remember being on a call one day. We were talking about operationalizing equity in government and what that looks like, and the struggles that government employees face on a day-to-day basis trying to move that work. And she was talking about these policy offices that exist within the county executive's office, and the Office of Women's Policy, and the Office of Immigrant Relations, and the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. And I remember it was the very first time that I had ever heard of a government institution, thinking back to that definition of belonging, and being able to make demands of government institutions and inform where they place their resources. And it was the very first time that I had ever heard of a government entity prioritizing and giving decision-making authority to a marginalized community, and multiple communities, again, through the number of policy offices that make up, that make up the Division of Equity and Social Justice, which our office is one of those policy offices. And so I was really resolved to come work here. Was able to have a position with Dr. Garcia and the Public Health Department, and then coming here was introduced to other institutions like Gender Health Center, where I was able to get connected to resources for gender affirming surgery and receive that in March of this year. Thank you. Thank you. But just so the ways in which, for me, that the intentionality of, and it's not to say that county government, County of Santa Clara has got it all figured out. We have significant, work to do to address and undo the harms of the entire legacy of this country, especially as it relates to marginalizing communities of different identities and divesting them of power. But for me, that sense of belonging and having finally experienced it and having finally been able to, because of the intentional resource allocation of a government institution, to receive resources to just change my life in such an impactful way, really informs my day-to-day work within the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging, to really ensure that we are intentionally examining our policies and our practices, who's benefited by them, who's burdened by them, and design intentional strategies that address root causes to eliminate those inequities in the future. So, thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Yes, let's give it up for Amber. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing such a personal story, as well as I'm pretty sure you're inspiring many others in this room right now. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the work that you continue to do. I have had the privilege to work next to Amber for many years now, and she's just incredible. All right. And the next question we have is for Daniel. Daniel, can you share specific strategies or initiatives that you've seen or implemented to create a more inclusive workplace for all, especially the LGBTQ plus employees at the city of San Jose?
Oh, can you hear me? These mics are very sensitive. This must be a Pisces like me. About 3 years ago, the Office of Employee Relations in the city of San Jose started offering employee resource groups. And so I was very involved in my Filipino American community here in San Jose, but I felt that I had a need to kind of come in and have a stronger LGBTQ community, especially in the workplace. So I submitted an application, and in tandem, someone else did at the same time. And now we're co-chairs. Nicole Altamirano is my co-chair, and she's also the president of Silicon Valley Pride. And so with our shared kind of organizing experience, we were able to kind of foster this group that we call Johnson Rivera QTPOC United Advocates. It's a long name because we all came together in a room and like, let's have all these pieces together. And we just go by the Johnson Rivera QTs for short because we're super cute. And so now that we've been organized for these past 3 years, we've been able to have monthly meetings and really talk about current topics that are happening within our own city, but also across the nation. And also hold quarterly events, whether that's for fun or for educational purposes. We've held SOGI workshops. We had panels on Trans Day of Visibility. And so because of these kind of different events, we have been able to kind of see changes in policy and changes in kind of representation in the queer community. And so one of that is that we were really strong advocates for budgeting for employee research groups. So they put this like idea out there, but they didn't really give us any money, you know? And usually that helps a lot with, bringing people in. And also, retaining kind of that sense of, that we're important to the city. So we advocated for all employee resource groups in the city to have funding. And now we're able to put on kind of these events and call up speakers and make sure they're paid, as well as like drag performers and stuff like that for our more fun events. And so we all also looking into our transgender policy and a lot of the practices that are happening in the city, because there's still a lot of changes that we need to make. Even though we've been around for 3 years, there's still red tape that we see in local government. And so it's nice to have kind of this community together. We're ERG of like about over 50 employees. And we're still growing, and sometimes some folks leave to go to the county, which is understandable. And so really, if you are wanting to put this kind of group out there, it does take a lot of work. But that's why we have community, to have that work together, so that no one feels like they're doing too much or feeling like a burden. And so I think it's really important to keep working together in order to foster that kind of community, and using our experiences, whether that's in, outside of the city, to bring it within. So that's some highlights.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Daniel. You're right. I think many of the times we do tend to be part of other communities due to our intersectionality. And it is something that inspires us to say, oh, now I want to do some more work in a different area that I also identify with. And at the same time, as we are continuing to work in the workplaces that we have, especially what I've seen in my own experiences, for example, that we tend to care and organize a lot for our outside community, and many of the times we don't pay as much attention as to our internal community, which is our workforce. So I am definitely glad that you are driving change in the city of San Jose as well, by providing resources that can definitely benefit employees, and that will continue to benefit others that are yet to come. Thank you for that. right, and that will bring us to our next question, and that will be to Isa. Isa, with your experience, let's give it up for Isa. With your followers present. All right, and your experience. Could you tell us what strategies organizations, programs can utilize so that LGBTQ employees feel empowered and able to share their lived experiences at work?
Thanks. So I think there's different pieces to this, and I think folks really kind of focus on or initially think of, let's have rainbow flags up, let's have pronoun stickers on our badges. And yes, do all those things. Those things are great, but don't stop there and don't just do that, right? So like, yes, talk about pronouns, teach about pronouns, train on pronouns, correct people when they misgender somebody, right? And continue to do that work, right? Be open to that work. So beyond pronoun buttons, pronoun stickers, beyond, rainbow flags places, pride flags places, beyond trainings, probably the most significant pieces are gonna be the culture and how folks interact, right? So, and this starts from like before, right? So like in terms of recruitment, hiring, retention, like all throughout that, right? So like pay attention to how you're creating that space for folks, and how you can continue to do that and improve on that. So part of that as a county system or government system, right, is like looking at those policies or like how we do that. Those like, what is that workflow? And to be honest, I think a lot of you all know, right, working with government entities, we haven't really updated or changed it much. And yeah, maybe it takes a lot of work, maybe it takes a lot of time, but it's worth doing. And I think especially for like new folks, folks come in with the energy of like, well, I have this idea, or like I had this thought, or like, has this been done? So for managers, for supervisors, really supporting that, right? When folks come in with that energy, from the jump, starting with like, yeah, tell me more about that. Like, how do we make that happen? Because people are coming in with that lived experience, and there is so much strength there. And also, it's people's livelihood. So people aren't always immediately gonna feel comfortable or supported in voicing those pieces, right? I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I think being supportive of folks and continuing to do that, continue the education, and talk to folks, build like community. And I think another piece that like we'll talk about too is that within government entities, like as government employees, we have like privilege. So I know this is like a commonality here on this panel, right? We all work for government entities, and there is privilege in that. There's, folks talk about job security and working for government. That's real. And we are representatives of like our community in the work. So push, right? Like we don't have to be complacent in the way the government has treated our communities, and we shouldn't be. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I've read your bio a little bit, and this is the first time I'm meeting you, and I feel like I've been missing out. But definitely sounds like you have definitely contributed to other places in where you have helped push the envelope moving forward. And there was something earlier on that Supervisor Arenas mentioned, which is that we had had others come before us, and also acknowledging all the work that they have done. And even back then, pushing the envelope might have mean just a little tiny bit. And now all of their work and efforts have helped us to be where we are today. And today you mentioned something really, really important. That is, it is not just about the pronouns. It is not just about having rainbow flags, but it's also what's coming next. And we are part of that change as well. So thank you so much for that. All right, with that, Rodrigo, we have a question for you. Where are the claps for Rodrigo? Hi, Rodrigo. How do you balance your role as a subject matter expert in the county of Santa Clara, along with being an advocate for the LGBTQ plus community, especially among the Latino LGBTQ plus community, managing Colectivo ALA?
Well, just for context, for folks who do not know what Colectivo Acción Latina de Ambiente o Colectivo ALA is, Colectivo Acción Latina de Ambiente, Colectivo ALA, it's a grassroots organization that we created in 2011 as a response to the lack of spaces for Latinx LGBTQ folks whose primary language was Spanish. And we created it because we needed a space to exist and to be visible. And we didn't consider ourselves activists or anything. We just wanted to have a space where we could be ourselves. And when we created Colectivo ALA, we didn't want to have an organization that would represent such a complex community, but we wanted to create a space where folks could achieve self-determination. And that is just a reflection of our individual experiences, that we wanted to be not an example for anybody. We didn't want to represent a whole community, but we wanted to, again, be visible and just exist. So that just has been my personal journey. And Colectivo ALA came before I joined the county. I joined the county in 2016. And it's just an important part of my life in being able to still be connected with my community. And I think this is important on why our lived experiences matter. Because we didn't learn about oppression and injustice in the classroom. We learned about those things by being who we are. And so, it's just something that we lived every day. And no matter how many flags and pronouns and, all these things that are coming, there's still aspects in our life that we need to pay attention. Therefore, it becomes necessary for us to have spaces like Colectivo ALA to continue that fight. And I want to share just a quick example as Isabella was talking that came to my mind. I went last month with my husband. We went to see a play in San Francisco. We had a great time. And during intermission is when a lot of people go to the bathroom, right? And I was fascinated to see that they had gender neutral bathrooms. I was like, wow, this is great. So I got in the line, and just for the sake of this illustration, there were, I'm going to use binary references. There were men and women in the line. And when I went into the bathroom, I noticed that there were urinals and 2 stalls. And the urinals were used with people with penises that could stand. And the stalls were still shared by men and women. So you would see that when the 2 stalls were occupied, women or those who preferred to go into the stall had to wait. And those who could make it into the urinals didn't have to. So yes, it was great that they had gender neutral bathrooms. That's great, but there was more that needed to happen. And I think that's, again, the lived experience, that if you are the one that can stand to pee, you wouldn't even think about those who can't. And so I guess that just has become part of my own experience and my commitment to continue nurturing spaces like Colectivo ALA for other folks to become visible and to to have agency and self-determination. It is important. I cannot see my life without any. And I'm just so glad that I work in an entity that is supportive also of smaller projects like Colectivo Ala. And I bring my experience onto the table when it is important to address issues of accessibility um, and making things more bring equity into the work that we have. Through Colectivo Ala, we've tried to open or widen access for our transgender sisters, because there's nothing currently that focuses on transgender Latinas who are undocumented, who are Spanish speakers. There's nothing, and that's embarrassing. And so, every opportunity that we have to widen that door for other people to come, it is important. So how do I manage it? Just by living. I don't see it as work. I see it as an opportunity to continue, making a space better for myself and for those around me.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you, Rodrigo. And as a previous member of Colectivo Ala, do you want to share that it is a space where you create friendships, where you create connections with other individuals, and you also learn about their daily struggles? Many of the times we are so overwhelmed with our own lives, with our own struggles, that we tend to forget that others are also experiencing different issues than us, that we don't know that maybe in the near future we may also encounter some of those issues. But just having a place to be able to learn from one another makes a huge, huge difference. And having that circle of support from from all of the members that are there, some of them have been there for many, many years since the very beginning, I think that is extremely important. And Rodrigo is such a great community leader. For those of you who might know him in the room, it's not only Colectivo Ala. He also has other opportunities for folks to be involved in theater, to be able to create spaces, to be able to invite them to his house and just being like, hey, let's have a mole, un pozole, with food and everything, which is something that I really, really love about Rodrigo, which is that ambience of welcoming and being able to be in a safe space, which many of the times we don't get to have that in our community. So thank you so much, Rodrigo. All right, so this next question is for anybody in the panel, whoever wants to answer it. How can allies and leaders better support and amplify the contributions of the LGBTQ plus subject matter experts in their organizations in a more intentional and effective manner? And some of you already spoke about this earlier, but if you were to, I'm sure we have managers in the rooms, we have leaders, we have supervisors in the room who may be able to benefit from your response.
Just a quick example. I think that when you have access to resources, to spaces, to become more public, it is important to be humble and to apply that cultural humility lens. That you don't have to always be the one that speaks, but it is important that you create the spaces for others to speak. And listen. You might have your own agenda, the things that are important to you, but it is important to also be aware that there are other peoples who do not have the access that you have. And I want to highlight my experience working with Supervisor Yeager. He had this wonderful project that I hope everybody has seen. If not, you should see it. It's an archival of history of LGBTQ folks in Silicon Valley. And anytime that I had this interaction with Supervisor Yeager, he was always very attentive in listening to what I wanted to say, particularly about the visibility of the Latinx community, Spanish-speaking community. It wasn't his experience because he's not Latino, but he was always able to create the space for us, in my case, to bring our concerns and the things that mattered to me, and he had the access and he made it available for us, and that was such an important and a clear example of true leadership, that you don't do the work for others, you create the space for people to lift themselves. I think that is really important.
Is this on? Oh, okay. I think also like, yeah, so like make this face, like that was a great example. Also, thank you, former Supervisor Kenyeger. I think on top of like making space for folks and listening to folks with lived experience, also if you have institutional knowledge to share that, right? So that also is like just being open with like your experience, your knowledge, especially within government systems and outside of them, but just, you know, if you have experience and information and knowledge about how things work and like how to best approach something or get something passed or moved along, that's helpful to us, right? So like also providing that and passing that on to folks who are ready to like move the work forward.
Thank you both. Amber.
Oh, I think it's.
Technical difficulties.
It's being weird. It's me. What was I?
So what?
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I think just echoing everything that Rodrigo and Isa have said, and also I think from my personal experience of having just recently this year, I think what Rodrigo mentioned around culture humility and not. I think it's easy to say don't be afraid of making mistakes and misgendering and saying the wrong thing. It's easy to say don't be afraid, and that's not reality. We live in such a punitive culture in terms of the binary thinking of right and wrong. But I think that piece of culture humility of just being cognizant and standing in the values that you stand for, and recognizing that making a mistake or not saying the right thing or receiving constructive feedback isn't a reflection of someone as an ally, is just an opportunity to continually to iterate that organizational culture that a number of folks have already talked about. And so I think just that it's much easier said than done, but for leaders and organizational decision makers who are allies of the LGBTQ community to, in that space, to not shy away from practicing things like pronouns, practicing inclusive language, practicing asking questions of, hey, I wonder who's benefited, who's burdened, who's not here at the table with us, what other perspectives, you know, could benefit this conversation. Am I making sense? Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, all of our panelists for answering that question, and also just want to add that yes, I think you all mentioned something very important, and sometimes it may. Oops. Hello. Okay. All right. So yeah, sometimes many of the times it's at the level that we might be in. Many of the times we may say, well, it's because
the Board of Supervisors says that we don't have a budget for this, or we currently are in budget cuts and there are no resources to provide. And I think Rodrigo mentioned something very important, that sometimes it's even just at the level of providing a listening ear and just being able to be active, practicing active listening with our coworkers, with our team members, even with our family members and community members as well, because that goes a very, very far way. It's not only about what we can provide at the moment, but perhaps when things can get better, and even just voicing and being able to represent those voices who may be afraid of speaking up, voices who perhaps haven't had the opportunity to shine, to be able to feel confident about speaking about their personal lives and issues at the workplace. So thank you to all of you for being able to provide us with that. In those lines, Daniel, this question will go for you. What advice would you give to an individual who might be here in today's audience regarding if they want to get more involved in their workplace, to be able to showcase or to be able to share their own lived experience, but either they haven't had a good experience doing so, or they are afraid of doing so?
Yeah, fear is a big thing in our community, but something that I always kind of lead with is that our community is very loving as well. So trying to find someone, not just like a huge community, but finding someone next to you that can lift you up as well in trying to make change. Something you said about like budget cuts and like things that are not in the budget can be like move forward. I think if it's important, it'll move forward because it's important, right? So if you advocate for that and you have a voice with people around you, you're going to be able to really make a change. An example I think of is I listened to a podcast recently about emergency response. And so oftentimes our city is in response to like heat advisories, we open up community centers, or we work with kind of CBOs to open up their spaces. But in this podcast, they talked about the queer community and how like, you know, in an event of an emergency, you know, sometimes we'll use a church to like have an evacuation center, but that's not always welcoming for people in our community to want to enter that space because of fear of being not accepted or fear of, you know, being rejected. Even if that space is made available through the means of government to have that safety. So I think, as everyone is saying here, it's important to have us at the table and have us really advocate for a budget for an ERG or budget for, you know, programs and policies that really are important for inclusion and belonging. And so that's kind of my takeaway. I mentioned this before. I'm usually like the youngest, queerest brown person in the room, and I'm in a mid-management level. And so I try to advocate as much as possible in those spaces to talk about, you know, like this is my lived experience, this is the lived experience of my colleagues. Like this is really important. So let's try to make that change.
Let's give it up for Daniel. Thank you, thank you. Let's see, Isa, I do want to ask you a question since you have been working in different departments and agencies within the County of Santa Clara. What are some of the challenges that you have witnessed that our members of the LGBTQ community face, especially when they're trying to speak up or when they're trying to share their lived experience?
Wow. There's a lot, and I'm probably going to miss stuff, so feel free to talk to each other and share. Yeah, I mean, I think our like systems are not set up to be supportive. So there's so much work to be done, and there's so much room for like growth and expansion. Not growth and expansion, but like things that I think most folks overlook when it comes to like name, pronouns, in systems. Like we don't need all the barriers that we have in place for those things, right? So like when a new person is hired on or shifts or changes to like a name or an email, like those things should not be that difficult. They don't have to be, you know? I think like something as simple as trying to get like pronouns on a badge, right? Like that can happen. Why is that so hard? But it's not happening. I know folks are advocating and fighting for it, so shout out to my team over there, GACC and the collective. And there's just so much. I think also what we see happening is folks will, move within the county, get to leadership positions, and then more so enforce kind of county standards, rules in a way that inhibit or don't support movement of programs, of projects that could support our community, especially when it comes to supporting trans, non-binary, gender diverse folks. What happens is we'll have an LGBTQ program or an LGBTQ project, and we assume or think that that's going to be supportive of folks who are trans, non-binary, gender diverse, gender expansive, whatever language folks are using. I always mess up, but we have room to grow, right? Like, and I think as folks move up, instead of just like moving from the top down of like my supervisors and upper management, the execs are saying to do this, so we have to do this. Move kind of like hear from your staff, listen to your staff, and support them in moving those projects forward, right? Because there's a reason those things are coming up. And even if or when you think like this may not fit here, how do we support it and make it happen in a place that does fit, right? So working together across departments, across programs. Yeah. I feel like the question was like, what difficulties have I seen? And I tried to shift away from that to like, what could we do?
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah, no,
I'll stop
thank
there.
you. I think you answered the question very, very well. And I do agree with you that there are definitely a lot more other things that we can continue to do as we move forward with this work that we're doing to continue to amplify our voices and be able to share our stories with others. Now, as we're near the end of our panel discussion, I like to reflect on some of the stories and some of the content and insights that we have heard here this morning. We've heard stories of dedication, resilience, and innovation that have led to impactful outcomes for the LGBTQ plus community. Now, I do want to ask a question, if we all of you can take a turn to answer this question, which is, what has inspired you to be an advocate of change, and how do you balance that with self-care?
And I think this has been shared by other panelists as well, but like lived experience, like kind of just like in our survival in life, it's kind of just come naturally. I think what supports the like self-care around that is community. Like, yes, self-care in all those ways, and also community care. Clearly, I have some great community here, and I really wish and hope that for everyone else. And like, if you feel like you don't, come to the people that are hyping us up because they're great.
Things that I've learned. I've been in places, in workplaces where I feel like I have constantly have to educate people about our experiences, and it gets tiring because people keep, it's not their experience. So something that I've learned for self-care is to understand that not always do we have to have that as in our agenda, like trying to change people's minds, like in the use of language or the difference between sex and gender, and all those things. That everyone has different journeys, and that is important for me to be loud when I have to be loud, and to just be compassionate with people who might take a little bit longer to understand, and some people might not. I think that is important, and that's a constant reminder for me in like picking my battles, because it can get insane to go against the the norm, the mainstream. So that has been my lesson learned.
Yeah. Everywhere. Hello. Um, and we talk about a lot of like heavy and serious topics all the time, that are affecting our community. So I think what I want to add is that we have to make sure we have fun. I think it's easy for me to say that because I come from a department that's literal mantra is building community through fun. But it's important to, have that kind of community together and being able to celebrate our achievements and celebrate ourselves because, there's going to be people attacking us, people that are not aligned with our views or aligned with our way of living. But, we're here together today to really celebrate what we've achieved and what we want to move forward with. So I really want to leave that with y'all is like, don't be afraid to play. Don't be afraid to, go out to lunch with people and rest and actually take your 15-minute breaks to walk with your community and stuff. So those are all very important.
For me, the thing that keeps me going, when I'm feeling frustrated or jaded, I remind myself of is that I genuinely, truly believe in the infinite potential of human beings, and human beings created the inequities that we all live with today, and so we can unmake them and heal from them. I genuinely believe that. Will we? That's a larger philosophical question, but I do believe that we can. And so that sort of perspective shift helps me to then sort of utilize some of the coping mechanisms I don't know, coping mechanism is the right term, but the strategies of then reminding myself to connect with community, especially my colleagues within the Division of Equity and Social Justice. We share a suite together, and it's incredibly powerful to be able to connect and to be in a place of frustration and be able to speak to someone, and then the next day maybe I'm in a more grounded place and someone else needs to be able to vent and talk things through. And so but that balance between feeling our emotions and bearing witness to them, but also then consistently looking for solutions to, okay, what's at the root of this? What this pain point that we're experiencing within this bureaucracy, what's actually happening here? Is it an organizational culture? Is it an ordinance or a law? Is it something from the state? Or is it like, something internally where it's like, yeah, no, we could print pronouns onto a badge. So why aren't we? Why? Getting really at the roots and then designing strategies to address those roots, because again, we have the potential. We are so adaptable as a species, but that organizing and that community to like believe that together and do that together, I think, is what helps me not give up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you, and thank you for sharing all those amazing strategies. It's what I'm hearing is having a lot of fun. It's extremely important. Well, maybe not a lot, but but definitely being in community and being able to surround yourself around those who provide you a listening ear, being able to be there for you, being able to have an opportunity to vent. I think that's also huge for us as we continue to navigate difficult situations in our workplace as well. Now, first of all, I do want to thank our panelists for being here this morning. Thank you so much for making time from your busy schedules to be here with us. And most importantly, I do want to thank you, all of you in the audience, for being here.
Again, all of this work we are able to do it because you are also helping us. You are doing your part out in the community, and you are also benefiting from all these workshops that the Office of LGBTQ Affairs have put together. So let's give it up for the Office of LGBTQ Affairs staff. And before we conclude, I encourage all of you that if you feel like you connected or something that was mentioned here in our panel this morning resonated with you, to connect with us. We're more than happy to be continuing to have these conversations moving forward, even outside this room. Perhaps we may be able to help you navigate some of the goals that you have and help you get to where you want to be. So please, let's continue to have these conversations, and let's continue to make change in our community. Once again, my name is Ricardo Romero-Morales, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.